Alright, gang, I'm making this video because I was talking to this a person I work with, and she had told me that her youngest son, who is 12, he had gotten a hold of some old comic books and he's really gotten into them. That kind of took me by surprise, because most kids his age, they're not into comic books, they're into everything electronic. When I was a kid, I got my first comic book from, I believe it was elementary school, and I want to say it was a Superman comic book that was a giveaway. I can't remember what the giveaway was for, but that kind of got me started in comic books. So my mom, she would buy comic books when she'd go to Eckert's, and she'd bring me back comic books by a company called Gold Key. And those comic books were based on classics like Moby Dick, Three Musketeers. There was some Star Trek in there. Or she'd bring me stuff that she knew as a kid, like Popeye. I never was a Popeye fan. And Sad Sack, which was a spinoff, or maybe the same thing as Beetle Bailey. Well, one day we stopped by an antique / junk store, and I had a dime in my pocket, maybe a little more. I can't remember, but I do remember paying a dime for the comic book. It was a Ghost Rider comic. I still have it. And the reason why I bought that particular Ghost Rider comic is because it was a Ghost Rider at a demolition derby on the cover. And I must have read that thing 100 times. So every time we'd go by that place, I would buy me more and more Ghost Rider comic books, to where I started getting a good collection. And I also got this Ghost Rider #1 from the same place. It's in really good shape. I'm going to show you guys a few of my comic books I still have, starting with the Ghost Rider. I have all the first release of Ghost Rider, starting with #1 until the end. I cannot recall what the last one was. I should have brought it out, but it's in the cabinet. But this is my Ghost Rider #1. It's in really great shape. It's been read, but there's no tears, no stains, nothing that would detract from it. This is a comic book that I will never, ever let go. The movies that spun off of by Marvel with Ghost Rider, I liked them pretty well. They did pretty good. It was, like most movies, there were some small slight adjustments to the storyline, but my understanding is that Nicolas Cage, who starred as a Ghost Rider and Johnny Blaze, that he was a Ghost Rider fanatic, and he just wanted to play the Ghost Rider. So I'm glad that they actually had somebody who knew about Ghost Rider, liked Ghost Rider, as the character, as the actor for the character. So that's the Ghost Rider #1. It was 20 cents originally, and I don't recall what I paid for it. I got it secondhand in the 70s. There's no telling what I paid for it. Dime, nickel, who knows? I don't recall. But that's the Ghost Rider. We'll go on to the next comic book that I fell in love with. Alright, Jonah Hex. I never picked up a Jonah Hex when I was younger. I got into Jonah Hex, it must have been the mid-80s, I would guess. And the reason being is that I have a lot of family up north, and we had to do a road trip up north one year, and on the way home we had to stop and of course fill the car up. So I go into the gas station, and it was a gas station / truck stop / everything, and they had a comic book carousel, and those were pretty cool. For those of you who don't know what a comic book carousel is, it's just a tall rack that spun around with all the comic books in it. There was nothing that really appealed to me except Jonah Hex, and typically, after when they put the new issues out there, all the old issues were removed, but I picked up 5 Jonah Hexes in sequential order and read them until we got back to Georgia. I read them over and over and over again to where I got hooked up on Jonah Hex. So At this time, I still wasn't driving. I was probably 13, maybe. I was able to take my bicycle and ride to the same junk store to where I got my Jonah Hex where I got my Ghost Rider comic book and started up my Jonah Hex collection. I got every episode of Jonah Hex all the way up until they ended it and started with Hex, which it was not that great. But Jonah Hex, he's one of my two most favorite comic book characters, Ghost Rider being one, Jonah Hex being two. As far as the movie, oh, it was horrible. I hated it. I did buy the DVD. I did see the movie. But the director, he blew it apart. I mean, it was horrible. The actor that played Jonah Hex, I can't remember his name, guy that played in the Goonies way back when. But Brolin, I think it's his last name, Brolin. He didn't do a bad job, but, talking to dead people and stuff like that just sucked. They should have stuck to the original storylines. And if you really know Jonah Hex, you've definitely seen The Outlaw Josie Wells starring Clint Eastwood. Pretty much a similar storyline. Not the same, but it's awful close. That to me is a Jonah Hex movie. I can watch that over and over again. So the Jonah Hex, number one here, I don't recall what I paid for it. I can't recall when I got it. It had to be like 82, 83. It was 30 cents when it first came out. This too is in really good shape. The first appearance of Jonah Hex was in Weird Westerns. Not Weird Western, I think it's All-Star Westerns. And I want to say it's issue 10, but I could be mistaken. I'm not a comic book expert, but I do keep an eye out for it, trying to get it. But there's also animated movies with Jonah Hex. They're pretty good. But yeah, Jonah Hex, he is another one of my comic book heroes. Wish they would try and save the Jonah Hex movie by coming out with another Jonah Hex. And I want to say that actor that played in the first Punisher, is his name Thomas Jane? I saw photos of him online prior to the Jonah Hex movie, and it was my understanding was that he wanted to play Jonah Hex because he actually had in those photos himself made up to look like Jonah Hex. I think they missed it again. When you have an actor that is passionate about something, as in a comic book character, they should have went his way. But again, bad director, bad decisions, bad script, bad movie. But I'll never stop loving Jonah Hex comics. All right, Star Wars number 1. Now I can't recall where I got it at, but this is the original release. There is a second release of this same exact comic. You can tell the price differences. It was one way you can tell, and then that it was the re-release of the number 1 comic of Star Wars. But also this bubble here, this one says first issue. The other bubble states it's I can't remember what it says. Basically, it doesn't say first issue. But I have all the Star Wars, all of them. Of course, I'm a Star Wars kid, Stormtrooper fanatic. In the 70s, Star Wars was it. For those of you who are my age and was in elementary school in the 70s, we used to once a month get the little booklet where you could order books. And I think it might have been 77 when the movie came out, or it could have been 1978. I can't recall. But when they sold the movie version of the book, it was pretty good size. I actually have it. I just got to dig it out. I have two copies. The original copy I got as a kid is, man, it's taped together, stained up, it's ruined, but I bought one the same year it was as the one I originally had as a replacement. But the Star Wars, that's the number one. Awesome. Now, getting back to the lady I work with whose son has gotten into the comic books, he is big into the Star Wars. So she told me he takes care of everyone he gets. So I have a bunch of triplets, I can't even say it, duplicates and triplicates of a lot of Star Wars comic books. So I sent him a bunch of them, and it blew his mind. He's got a box, he keeps them all in. So hopefully he'll stick with the Star Wars comics and keep going and keep the comic books alive. Alright, here's Battlestar Galactica number 1. I remember getting this probably at Eckerd's maybe. And the reason why I keep saying Eckerd's is back in the 70s where I live, the big town was tiny. And every time we'd go to town, we went to the same shopping center, which had the grocery store, a Woolworths, a Key Catalog, and an Eckerd. And that's back then. Eckerd, you did everything at Eckerd. Drop film off, get your tubes tested for your TVs and radios. I wonder how many people remember that. But Eckerd was the place for me to get my comic books. So I got the Battlestar Galactica number 1. Now I'm missing several of the later issues of my Battlestar Galacticas. I did not know what happened to them, but I still have most of the first, like 1 through 20 or 30. I'd have to go back and look. But that's the Battlestar Galactica number 1. Alright, G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, number 1. I didn't buy this one in town. I think I picked it up at the comic book guy that was up the street from where I lived. He's no longer there, of course. But this is the original first release. They also released it again, like an anniversary release or something. But that's number 1, and I have almost every one of these still. The later numbers I kind of started falling out on. I just, I was kind of burned out on G.I. Joe. I watched every cartoon. I would race home from school in my truck just so I could watch G.I. Joe. And it would kill me when they would run those, for a full week special, like mini-series, if I couldn't get home in time to watch them. But that's G.I. Joe number 1. Great condition. Here is I do not have a number 1 of, I'm sorry, let me say it like this. I don't have the Army at War with the first appearance of Sergeant Rock, nor do I have the number 1 of Sergeant Rock when he split off and got his own comic book. In the 70s, man, I loved war movies, the little plastic army men. Me and my brother, we had toy machine guns and army helmets. We were just big time playing like we were in the army. My dad was big into the military movies because he was a Marine in the 60s, early 70s, well, let's just say 60s, Vietnam. Sergeant Rock is awesome. There was a Super Friends, what's it called now? Justice League, where all Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, they all get zapped back into the World War II time, and Sergeant Rock is there with his platoon. I love Sergeant Rock. I've got tons of Sergeant Rocks. Great comic. I don't have a GI Combat sitting here. I do love the GI Combats as well because of the Haunted Tank and other stories in GI Combat, but the Haunted Tank was another favorite of mine. Alright, like I said, this is going to be short. Well, I thought it was going to be short. It looks like I'm running up to 15 minutes on this video, but this is something I'm still passionate about, and it's just disappointing that kids aren't into comic books like they used to be. And I base that off of what I see. When I go to there's a comic book dealer in town, there's a couple of them, but one of them, it's his sole business, and he does really right by customers. You buy a certain amount of comic books, he cuts prices and all that good stuff. He has Father's Day deals, Mother's Day deals, holiday deals. Love going to see that guy to get my comic books. But when I go there, the disappointing thing is there's no kids in there unless they're drug in there by their father. Now there are some girls that are big time into comic books, but they like the newer stuff from, like, I'm calling newer stuff 90s. But like, I'm not into those comic books. Just never could get into them. I just like the 70s era, 60s era comic books. Now if you have a kid that enjoys reading, take them and get them a good comic book. These things are great. They were entertaining. And then you had the all the advertisements in there with the X-ray glasses. Sometimes you had the Daisy BB gun advertisement. Something called Grit magazine. Never saw a Grit magazine, but if you sold so many Grit, you had a chance to get a 10-speed bicycle. Those were pretty cool to see today when I open up these old comic books. I'm not going to take them out of the bags. They've been in the bags forever. Every one of my comic books are bagged. I do have other issues. I just didn't think I'd want to pull them all out, but I have number one of Emergency from the 70s. Some other knockoff things. I got number one of Spider Woman. Now I picked that up at a yard sale probably about 4 or 5 years ago for $1, and it was number one. I also have a number one of Sergeant Fury with his Howling Commandos. Horrible shape. I didn't realize it was number one. I paid $1 for it. I mean, it's not tore up and ripped up, but it's not in the best shape. It could be in a lot better shape. So guys, that's it on this. So, comic books, scared they're going to die off. If you guys like me, enjoy them, try to get the kids back into them. This is good reading, good entertainment, and a lot of times you can go to a comic book store and get them fairly inexpensive, the older ones. But that's it. You guys have a great day.